with me developing that system, I just went all in. Like I said, my back was against the wall, and what else do I have to do? And it was support and provide for my family. So I was in it for whatever I could get. So with by yourself, if you're the potential that you can make in this very moment at this very time with the business is around $10,000 to $15,000 a month.
Wow. Hi there, folks. I'm Sean, the Modern Yeoman, and I'd like to welcome you to another Homestead Hustlers episode where we talk to homesteaders that not only grow their own food, but grow their own income. Recently, I had the pleasure of sitting down with my friend Alex, otherwise known as the Flower Guy here on YouTube. Now, Alex makes a living growing and selling flowers from his homestead. Now, naturally, as somebody who's interested in talking to homestead hustlers like Alex, I was thrilled when I got the chance to sit down with him and actually ask him about how he does it, and maybe about how other people can do that as well. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, I'd invite you to grab a hot beverage, sit back, and enjoy the conversation I had with Alex. So, ladies and gentlemen, you're probably wondering who I've got here, and I've got here a good friend, somebody that I've actually had the pleasure of meeting in person last year, my friend Alex, also known as the Flower Guy. And we'll give Alex a chance to tell us where you can find him and on YouTube and other locations online here in a little while. But first, before we get too far into everything, I just want to give Alex a chance to introduce himself. Alex, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your homestead, and maybe a little bit briefly about what brought you to where you're at right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Sean had said, I'm Alex. I'm AKA known as the Flower Guy here. And, we're in the Blue Ridge Mountains, nestled at the top of the mountain here. And we're always catching the weather, just like you are right now. I think you said.
We're dealing with some rain right now.
Same thing here. And, the great part about living in the Blue Ridge Mountains is that we have a lot of wildflowers around. And that's what really keeps us around here. And so my wife, Miranda, and I have two young kids, 1 and 3 now. So that's pretty close. They're 20 months apart. And it's just something that we wanted to do together. We had businesses before that took all of my time. And with me telling you who I am and what I'm doing, the whole reason for me doing what I do is to trade my effort for money and not my time, because I want my family to have my time.
So just to be clear, when you say the Flower Guy, you're a flower farmer.
That's correct. Yeah, our main goal here is to farm dahlias. That's the exotic flower. That's what we want to focus on as the main bloom. But we do, 40 to 50 other varieties. And I think right now we're at 3,000 dahlias or something like that. And the tubers are somewhere close to 10,000.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So, in terms of like the homestead itself, do you have any animals? Do you have any, other crops that you're growing? Are you doing any veggies for your own kitchen?
Yeah. So the vegetables are always the main source. We need those because, as you know and I know, there's a shortage everywhere you look, or the quality. If we're not really focusing on the shortage, we're focusing on the quality, and that's what you and I are focusing on: is what can we do for ourselves and what's most beneficial. We've had livestock. My family owns a large farm, and so I've always been able to be around that. And they have cattle and other livestock, but we've divvied a little bit into sheep. We've had goats. I think we had like 27 goats last year, and so all of that was on leased land. And that's something I would like to talk to you a little bit about too.
Absolutely.
It wasn't owned land, and that's how we are. We are on a homestead right now, but even if you don't own the land, you can still have your homestead wherever, as long as the availability is there and it's clear on both parties. So anyways, the homestead for us is 15 acres that we lease and rent from someone, and the house is in there as well. And we grow sunflowers there. And then there's also 2 other farms that we lease, and we grow sunflowers there too.
Okay. So I just want to jump right in and talk about flowers, if you're okay with that, and the flower business.
Right.
So give us a little bit of a sense to how you got started in the flower business. What was the genesis from you just being interested in flowers and looking around and seeing that, hey, flowers grow really well in our climate, in our environment. So you see that, you know, that you're in an ideal environment for growing flowers. What brought you from, okay, this might be a good idea, to let's actually start trying to make a business out of this?
All right. Yeah. So let's jump back a little bit when I was talking about the businesses that we had prior to.
Okay.
That was something that we wanted to create something unique, something that you could build an experience out of, something that you could build sustainability out of. You know, you could follow it down: freedom, time, whatever you want to go with. But the flower farming wasn't really ever in mind, ever. It wasn't there. It brought me to a point where I was working a lot of hours, and the turnover rate for what I was doing wasn't matching up with my efforts. And I had a landscaping company for this particular adventure. And, you know, that's what drove me to this point. So starting from the landscape company, it was just too much time. It was too much effort and not enough return. I'm not talking about money necessarily, but the quality, you know, the quality of life. So anyways, I was speaking with my wife, and just so everybody knows this, she's a stay-at-home mom with our two young kids. And that put my back against the wall, really. Like, what do I do now? We started thinking about what we should do, and to bring my mom into the situation. I'm 25, by the way, and to bring my mom into the situation, she had mentioned maybe growing microgreens. You know, we could start that in the basement because, like I said, there was no land owned. So maybe we could grow microgreens or something like that. Well, we start jumping into something in that nature. And what happened is that where I live, there's not, the supply and demand doesn't match, you know, and there was a guy that was local in town that had already been dilling and cut flowers. Well, he had the idea of what the process was and everything, and he would be the most experienced that I could talk to in this area that I knew of, you know, checking my network out.
Okay.
And from that point, he was growing cut flowers. And he said, you know, I don't think the supply and the demand is there as well, because I started asking people and interviewing people like, hey, do you know what a microgreen is? Do you know the value of a microgreen and all these things? And it wasn't there. People in my area aren't looking for quality. They're just looking to get in a grocery store, find what's cheapest. And I think that's the problem that we're facing. Like, you know, the price is rising and we're complaining. So it's huge that we're complaining because we want the cheapest product we can get. Well, let me get back to my story here. That has a lot to do with what I'm saying. And I wanted to grow something with quality. And I didn't want it to be to the cheapest level. And so that's why I was picking microgreens. A month later, I found out that microgreens was not the solution to my problem because it just wasn't there, like I'm saying. But this older gentleman took me under his wing as far as a mentor goes. And I really recommend people to that situation. Always have a mentor in your homestead, in your business and lifestyles. You know, somebody that's already been there in that experience and that has made the mistakes for you. And so that's where I went with. He took me under his wing, and that's how I ventured into the cut flower business.
Okay. So you realized that there was a market there. You realized you were in an ideal position to start capitalizing on that market. In other words, you had a good amount of land that you could plant these flowers on. And you also had a mentor that could help kind of guide you into the business and show you what steps to take.
Yeah.
So you realized, hey, I'm in a good spot to do this. I've got the land to do this, the resources to do this, and I've got some guidance to get into it. So you made the move from thinking about this as a potential business to actually starting this as a potential business. So I'm guessing what you did first was just started planting flowers, right? Dahlias. Is that how you started doing this?
I just started planting seeds. It didn't have to be dahlias at all, but specifically speaking, I had to find a market. And it looked like the market was more faced towards dahlias, and that's why I went in that general direction. So I think where you plant you'll also sow, but you need to plant plenty to also sow plenty, whatever we're in and all of life, really. And so, with me developing that system, I just went all in. Like I said, my back was against the wall, and what else do I have to do? And it was support and provide for my family. So I was in it for whatever I could get. So I made the decision that it looked like it was going to be dahlias. So from that point, I'm like, I'm going to sell the business. I'm going to sell the landscaping business.
The landscaping business. Okay.
Yeah, I hadn't quite sold it yet. It was right in the middle of winter, and I was like, I'm going to sell it. So that's exactly what I did. I sold it. And I had potential buyers already, so that was easy enough for me to just get rid of it. So now it was facing all of my direction and efforts towards one area, and that was dahlias and finding the market. I'm actually doing a course on that right now, identifying your buyer, finding the buyer, and who your avatar is. And so that is a really key point in anything we're doing. Any type of homestead journey, if we're going to try to bring income off of it, we have to know the goals and morals and values of our customer. And that's what I exactly done with the dahlias.
Okay. All right. So I'm just trying to get a sense, and you're telling me this is awesome. I love hearing the genesis of how these things start. And so giving us the background on those three things, you had the resources, you had the mentorship, and you had the time to start doing it.
Right.
So you sold the business, you sold the landscaping business. And so I'd imagine that gave you some capital to start actually planting your flowers. Do you mind talking about how much you spent to start up, and like maybe a sense of how many flowers you started planting, that initial burst of like, okay, I made the decision to do this, I'm jumping in. What was your investment in terms of money and in terms of how many flowers you started planting initially? I'm
gonna start with the landscaping business, because I feel like I'm cheating you if you don't know exactly what I'm talking about when I start. So our landscaping business was turning $25,000 to $27,000 a month.
Nice.
That's for me, that's good. I mean, that's a lot, but it didn't match up. So what I had to do is I took it all risk management, and I'm like, it's got to happen. So I didn't even care if it was only $1,000 a month that I was going to make after that, because I knew that I could build on that.
Yes.
What I had done is I took $750 because I needed this. I felt like I needed this big cushion to sit on in case this doesn't work out well. I took $750 and kind of peddled it almost in a way like drugs. And
$750,000.
$750.
Oh, 750. Okay.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Yeah. Okay. $750. And I turned that into $18,000 shortly after. So that was the beginning of it, from selling seeds, from selling clones to selling dahlias, and actually foraging on the sides of the road. That's how I made that $750 expand into $80,000. So it's, find your opportunities. What's your strengths? What's your weaknesses? What's your opportunity? And what's your threats? So that's what we have to focus on. And that's what I focused on. And so
just to be clear, you spent $750 for your initial investment on seeds and supplies.
Drip tape, your pruners, your loppers, things like that. And I had a pole saw from my landscaping business that I kept. So that was $600, but initially investing capital was $750.
Under $1,000. And we'll probably get to the journey of how you made money on that real quick, but just for a nice little sound bite, from that $750, you're able to turn it into
$18,000.
$18,000. That's awesome. That's incredible. So maybe we can talk a little bit about real quickly about how you made that conversion. You made, okay, I planted I took $750 worth of investment, seeds, supplies, and I was able to turn it around, sell it, and turn that $750 into $18,000. Let's talk a little bit about how you did that. So you grew the flowers. You had these
not all of them
flowers, not all of them. You picked some of them. You foraged some of them.
Yep.
And so what did it look like to I'm trying to see a good way to put this. Did you just go to local people, florists, farmers markets, and just sell bouquets? How did you make that initial $18,000?
Right. Yeah, that's a very good question. And this was my first few months of starting. And now, Sean, in the future here, we can get a little bit more into that in depth in a few minutes, but it turned into something even greater. Like we were talking about over the summer, it turned into much larger numbers. But as soon as I started out, the one thing that we need to remember and the viewers need to remember is that the mentorship, that's where I started. It all started there. Where do I need to start? Asking those questions. You need to find somebody that's already done it.
Yeah.
So I got the rope showed to me in a sense. And that was like the script of what to say to a florist, what to say to a wholesaler. But where I started was I was actually selling my product to the mentor. I was selling it, but I was only selling it at half price. He's like, it's going to cost you. And that's another thing we need to know. It's going to cost us sometimes to have a mentor. I sacrificed 50% of what I was selling for him to teach me. So then, I wanted to go from that to something else. And so I started going to farmers markets, and I could do $500 a day at a farmer's market. And I didn't go to many of them, but because I was just now getting into the motion of doing that. And so I was going to farmers markets. I would go to florists by myself. And I was actually just marketing to my local area for bouquets for sale on Facebook.
So you just showed up either to the farmers market or to the florists with.
At first, yes.
You had just flowers with buckets.
You. Yeah. You don't go empty handed, go with presentation. I had buckets of flowers, and, you need to know when to go, when to sell, and things like that. And that's something I cover in the course as well, when to go and when to sell. And I could, that's an easy one to tell people, but it's hard to explain over just a few short paragraphs.
Sure. Got it. There's some nuance involved, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So that's really how we got started. And that's where our first sales were. And that, the first sale, I think we were speaking about this, the first sale that actually made me want to keep driving on this was like just selling one flower, making $1 from the effort. And the reason why is because in a few short months, you could see something, and as well as I do, you could see something that you went from seed all the way to harvest, all the way to process, all the way to the selling point. And I made $1 from it. And I knew right then and there, if I can make $1, then I can turn it to 18,000 of those dollars.
Yeah, it's a matter of growing the product, literally growing the product and turning that product into money. So you started seeing some momentum.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, wow, I turned an initial investment into a much bigger return on that investment. So I'd imagine at this point, you realized that there was something to this business.
The ROI was significant.
Yeah. Obviously, I'd imagine there's a seasonal component to this. I mean, unless you have like a greenhouse or something. So when you were just starting out, this was in the spring and the summer, I'd imagine.
It was in winter. That's when I had started everything. It was probably 3 winters ago. It was in winter when I started my seeds and plugs, and I was prepared for spring. So yes.
Okay. All right. Wow. That's incredible. So you just kept the momentum going.
Yeah.
And I'd imagine after that first batch that you sold, you were done with the flowers. But you're like, okay, I need to do this again. I need to get going on this again.
I need to do this a lot more.
I need to do this a lot more. I need to scale this up. Okay.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I'd imagine you had made some pretty significant relationships with people in like the farmers market world, in the florist world. And they said, hey, you've got great flowers. Come back. We'd love to buy some more of them.
Yep.
Okay.
And Sean, I'll stop you right there for just a second, because that exactly what you're saying needs to be heard a little bit more. And it's like, we need to know that it's the emotions that we play on our customers. And the first thing that I would want to do to a customer is get them to see. If you can get them to see, then they're going to look at it, of course. They're going to walk over to it. Then you want them to pick it up. You want the first three senses, you want them to pick it up and feel it. And then the next one is smell it, because if you do that, your customer relation and customer retention is much higher. And so that's exactly where I started in trying to study you as the customer to find your problems and solutions.
Okay. All right. So at this point, that actually kind of leads me to another question. Are you at the point now where you even need to advertise or market, or is it just a matter of showing up to the places where people buy these flowers?
You don't even have to show up. They call you. It's like that. But that bases on credibility. That's the next thing. You don't just get credibility for showing up one time. You don't get credibility for a month later and having sporadic sales. You get credibility by being there every time, when you're going to be there, having the quality and the quantity that they want at that very moment. So to answer the question clearly, most of the time people are calling me now. They're calling me for flowers because they know me for the main flower. And that's what I recommend to people, is have something main, the main product, main produce, main flower,
a niche,
livestock. Yes. If you don't have that, then you run the risk of running yourself and burning yourself out, or also you're in too many directions and don't have enough time to focus in on one thing. And that was my problem for years. I would go from job to job to job, and that's why I couldn't really specialize into one specific thing.
Okay. All right. So there's a lot of importance, it sounds like, around finding a very specific specialty or niche, or in this case, right, flower.
Right.
Not only are you known as a guy that just sells flowers, but you're known for your dahlias specifically.
Right. People with weddings, people to the wholesalers, large events, all the way from, hours from here, almost to your house. And that's what, you're 3 hours away from me. And then I have a large circle that people are calling me from. So yeah, it's a large, you're circumferencing, and the willingness to sell is where we need to look towards that. And if you have the willingness to sell, then cash flow is created.
Okay. Awesome. Now, I'm not going to get too much into the specifics of what you need to start growing. I think that's something that you can help people with in your own channels and your own endeavors. And so we'll talk about that here in a minute. But I am interested in assuming you have the land, whether that's your own land or it's leased land,
right?
Assuming you have the resources to get started with some seeds, which doesn't take much to get started. And assuming you have the hustle to go out and actually sell those flowers. We've already seen what you made for that first kind of attempt that you made and how awesome that ROI was.
Yeah.
Where your business is at now, are you comfortable with telling us how much you can make in a typical month with flowers, where your business is at now?
Yeah. So a business like this in this particular area, I'm gonna do a little bit of math. Okay. So
okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Let's see. And I can re-say it.
No, that's fine. Hey, take your time. This is a really fascinating question. Not necessarily, I don't need to know what your books are, right, but just in general, what is the potential that one has to make in a month?
So with by yourself, if you're the potential that you can make in this very moment at this very time with the business is around $10,000 to $15,000 a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible.
The return on investment, like if you were to come through my course or whatever, the return on investment is between 200 to 300% on each row that you're growing. That's what I've come up to find out. So when people are wondering, what could I make on that? On my 200-foot row, you might be able to come out at 200% return. That's an average for us. This year was 299.89% return on what I had. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So that's just mind-boggling that you can make a 200% return. And again, there is something to be said about the specifics of where you're at, whether you're in a climate that you can grow in,
Yeah, exactly.
what the market is like, and what you've niched into. I'd imagine if there's somebody that the florists go to as their sunflower person,
there is, yeah.
It might not be in your best interest to jump into sunflowers and just go hardcore on sunflowers when these florists have already built up a wonderful relationship with the sunflower farmer. I wonder if it's beneficial. And this is one of those places where having a mentor is really good, because they might already know the market that you're in. But I wonder if it's beneficial to go around to florists or even farmers markets and ask them, hey, what kind of stuff are you looking for? What kind of stuff are you hurting for?
Beneficial. It's the part of being Snoopy and figuring out who your competitors are, who because you need to know your supply and demand. Who has the best quality? Why do they have the best quality? And can you compete with them? I mean, that's the biggest point of that. And yes, you need to go around to the florist and just speak to them. Customer relationship, even in the middle of winter, you still need to call and check up on them. Hey, what can I do for you? The wholesalers, the farmers markets, the same thing. And it goes for produce or livestock, anything that you have. It's just customer relationships, trying to get that back and forth to them so they know that you're serious about it and that you can provide them quality when they're calling for it.
So even something as simple as walking in to a florist shop and seeing what they have and developing a relationship with them, maybe buying a bouquet from them, saying, hey, I've been growing flowers myself. What kind of stuff are you guys looking for? Even something as simple as that. It's kind of non-threatening. You're not laying on too much sales on them. Building up a conversation with them, I feel might be a beneficial approach if you're just starting to get into this business.
One thing that I say, and that, you can build a business 1,000 different ways and get to the same ending result. But one thing that I would say for people wanting to start or something like that is maybe build a small flower garden or whatever you have and give it quality. But then also when you're trying to market it, you might have to give them away a little bit. Like, for instance, you're going in there to buy one. I would go in there to give them one. Like a couple bunches of dahlias might be $40-$50, and they know that. But for me, that wasn't my cost. So I can take them in there and be like, hey, here you go. This is me. This is who I am. This is what I do. And here's my quality. That's what I would leave it
on me. That's a great tip. So that's a good way to start a relationship, is giving them something for free. Hey, this is what I'm capable of. If you want to hit me up for more, we can talk. If not, have a nice day. Enjoy this beautiful bouquet that I just gave you.
Yeah.
And wow, that's a hot tip. That's really cool.
Their concerns. The biggest concern with when you do that is this right here. If you can specifically give them the flowers and have the freshest bouquet or quality bunch that you can give them, they're concerned of how well your flowers will hold up. And if they beat the wholesalers and you can be their number one go-to guru, that's where you're going to find your customer relation at. That's where you're going to find your first buy at, is making sure that they're fresh and making sure that they get there on time. And that's it. The flowers sell themselves. Yeah. You don't necessarily have to be a good salesperson if you have something that looks better than you, right?
Yeah, that's a good way to put that. That's especially relevant for me and my mug. So that is incredible. And all of this stuff is very intriguing. And I'm sure that people watching this video are getting a lot out of this. What advice would you give, besides the advice that you've already given us, if somebody was looking for a place to start, if somebody was in a position where they're like, I think I might be able to get into this, what advice would you give to them? What should they potentially do first before they get in too deep? What's the first step they should take?
Research is the biggest one, because we all are impulsive buyers when it comes to things that spike our interest, whatever that might be. Even if you're very tight, I would say it's research, because You don't want to go out and buy 1,800 seed packets of all these different varieties that you have and think that you're going to be able to have a return on it when each one of those were $5 to $10 a pack.
Sure.
So that's something, the biggest thing I would do. You don't need that much. And if anything, and you're a new grower or want to be into it, into a business, is don't do more than 15 varieties at first. And
don't spread yourself too thin.
Yeah, don't do that. And the other thing to that is make sure that you're always using things around you. You don't have to buy the newest, best thing out there. You just need to have something that is able for you to work efficiently.
Do you think people, here's the big question. Do you think people could eventually get to the point where they could sustain themselves and their families by growing flowers?
As far as purchasing outside seeds or plugs, or as far as like income,
just building a business, is it possible to turn this into a full-time living, or is this something that really is more suited to kind of like a side hustle?
No, I think the second year, if you put all in and you have savings of some sort or some flexibility, the first year of just building the business, the second year you could be all in and you could potentially do $40,000-$50,000, if not more, off of your plot of land. And I'm talking under an acre of land on something like that.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Alex, I've been very impressed, very intrigued by this, and I'm sure the people watching this are intrigued as well. How can people learn more and get in touch with you? And what kind of, you've got a course, you've got a YouTube channel. Can you tell us about all those things, how people can get a hold of you and reach you, and maybe elaborate a little bit on what you're doing with this course?
The course will be out in the next week to 2 weeks. And basically what I'm teaching people is how to build a business out of a cut flower industry. Now has never been a better time to be in the cut flower industry when it's expanding by $1 billion every year annually. And globally, it should be up to $37 to $40 billion in the next 7 years.
Wow, that is crazy.
So if you think that it's too late, it's not too late. It's actually probably prime time to be in this solution to their problem, because a lot of people are wanting more local as far as produce, livestock, and flowers. And it's something that creates emotion. And just to give you a quick hint, and when COVID hit, right when everything was dropping, flowers went up 30%.
Interesting.
Flowers went up 30%, and that was because of the emotional factor. People they were at home, they wanted flowers. So that's one thing that I want to tell people, is that it is an emotional factor, and you can catch flowers at all walks of life, from when you're born to when you die, when you have a birthday. People are going to celebrate with flowers. So you can catch me at The Flower Guy on YouTube.
I'll include a link in the description below to both your YouTube channel, The Flower Guy, love the name, and I'll also include a link to, now, do you have a website for your course?
The course. So hopefully, like I'm saying, in the next week or two, but where you can find that right now is YouTube. And because I'll be making sure that's current. Like when the course comes out, I'm going to make sure it's current with the link on there, because right now I'm just working out all the hiccups. And basically, let me get back to that real quick. It's teaching people how to build their LLC, how to make an EIN, how to even profit and turn the first dollar in their cut flower business in the first year. That's basically what it comes down in a nutshell. It's just teaching people the legality principles to be able to provide for their family and to become more sustainable.
Okay, awesome. And so folks can find out more about that at your YouTube channel, which I'll link to below. Alex, any final thoughts or things that I may have not covered that you'd like to cover, or words of wisdom that perhaps haven't been expressed yet? Any final thoughts that you'd have?
I have one thing that I would want to tell people that I have really been focusing on is just start where you're at. If you don't even have a piece of land, if you don't have, you can't even do anything with where you rent, outdoors I'm talking about. If you have a basement, or if you have an attic or something like that, start where you're at and just start growing plugs, creating germination, maybe start learning to clone, to propagate. All these things are very valuable when it comes to any source of produce or flowers. And I want people to know that, because if there was a shortage, we need to be sustainable, like we were talking about.
Sure.
And to be able to learn how to do that, and just to create the reoccurring consistency that you don't have to buy seeds, you don't have to buy plugs. And then also you just created another avenue of profit for your business.
That's inspirational. Start where you're at.
Start where you're at, wherever it's at.
Wherever it's at. Alex, thank you so much for joining me today. I know that people are really going to get a lot out of this talk that we had. So thank you very much. I really do appreciate that. And thank you folks for watching. As I like to say, to cap off all of these videos, remember, as always, slowly, slowly. But with these videos, I do like to add another little rejoinder, which is grow your own food and grow your own income as well. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys.